Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Restoring the Soul. I think we just crossed the 400 mark. And with that crossing, a special guest today. Welcome back to the Restoring the Soul podcast, Brian Zahnd.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me back. It's good to be with you.
You have a wonderful new book out called Unseen Existences of Heaven, Earth, and the Divine Mystery in All Things. I got an advance copy, and I had the privilege of reviewing it. And I had to work hard because the book was about so much. It wasn't just about one thing. It was about many things that then crystallized about halfway through into this one thing. So it's a book about heaven. And as I wrote in my endorsement, one of the things that you did so skillfully was you eschewed, you avoided all of the sentimental pathways that one could go down in writing about heaven at all. So well done with that.
Thank you. Yeah, there's at least three bad paths you can take if we talk about heaven. And I think it's part of why people have been reticent to talk seriously about heaven, at least in more serious theological circles. You mentioned the sentimental path. There's the sensationalist path. You know, those my 30 minutes in heaven and I saw the streets of gold books, you know.
Yeah.
And then there's the escapist heaven that paves the way for people to have no concern or even disdain for the well-being of this planet and others around us. And so I didn't want to do any of that stuff. So
yeah, kind of the left behind mentality.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. You know, I like to drop this quote every time I can because most people are shocked when they hear it, and who knows, we may have to edit this out. But regarding the left behind literature, which of course made both of those authors very, very wealthy, 25 million copies last I knew, Eugene Peterson was asked to comment on it years ago, and he said that it was Christian pornography.
Yeah, you know what? I think I do remember him saying that. Yeah, that's quite that packs a punch, and I think it's accurate.
Yeah, that it awakens an appetite for something, but it's not actually rooted in a kind of relational mysterium tremendum that calls us to a place of humility, as you talked about in the book. Here's where I want to start. We talked about this ever so briefly in the podcast that we did around your book, When the World's on Fire. You are a pilgrim, and the theme of this book is pilgrimage, and heaven is pilgrimage. Our life is pilgrimage toward heaven. But Brian, a week from Friday, I'm going back to St. Cuthbert's Way for the third time, and I'm hiking the 100 kilometers from outside of Edinburgh. We'll start in Melrose all the way down to Holy
We'll probably
Island.
just talk about this for the whole time then.
We should. Because haven't you done St. Cuthbert's multiple times?
I've done it, the entire thing, starting in Melrose, like you're talking about, twice. And then last year, we were there with St. Stephen's University leading students. We didn't do it all. We didn't have time to do it all, but we did sections. And then Perry and I would teach on it. And then we spent a couple of nights on Linda's farm. Oh, I love that. So the book, the original title for the book was Paths of Unseen Existences, which it comes from, I'm going to go ahead and read the epigraph. It comes from Walt Whitman, Song of the Open Road. There's a line that says, "You paths worn in the irregular hollows by the roadsides, I believe you are latent with unseen existences. You are so dear to me." So my title all through the writing process was Paths of Unseen Existences. The publisher wanted to make it more pithy, and I think maybe rightly so. They just shortened it down to Unseen Existences. But then you do lose, at least in the title, what you've already alluded to, that there's a couple of themes that I eventually want to bring together. That is, yes, there is this other realm, this unseen world, this spiritual world that the Bible often calls heaven or the heavens, but we can also understand our own life as a pilgrimage of the soul toward our true telos of union with God in heaven. So yeah, you're exactly right. There's those two themes that then I try to bring together. So, but yes, pilgrimage. So I Michael, I think of my pilgrim self as my best self.
Yeah.
And we've walked St. Cuthbert's 3 times. We've walked Camino de Santiago 4 times, done some other things here and there, but yeah.
So
I mean, at any given moment, I'm happy to do all that I'm doing, but at any given moment, I'd probably rather be walking pilgrimage somewhere.
Yeah. So because this is so related, we won't just make this a commercial for the Camino or St. Cuthbert's, but what is it about those spaces and the process for you of getting away and, being in beauty and slowing down? What is it about that draws you so deeply?
Well, I mean, you hit on a couple of things right there. It is beauty, it is slowing down, and it is the blessed simplicity that, at least for a period of time, your life is reduced to having really no other task than getting up in the morning and walk, 10, 12, 13, 14 miles. I mean, life becomes simple. It becomes slow. You don't move any faster than foot speed. You're outside the entire time because, we're more and more, it seems like, confined, to these artificial spaces of, walls and roofs and all of that. I mean, we need shelter. I understand that. But if we're not careful, we can just live all of our life indoors. And so to be most of the day outdoors, doing something very simple, especially if it has some kind of spiritual intent. I mean, you're walking St. Cuthbert's Way, this, 7th century British saint involved in evangelizing the British Isles. Or if it's, the Camino de Santiago, it has all kinds of spiritual implications. I think that's just so good for our soul. And what's interesting, pilgrimage goes back to the medieval period. And the idea was that the pilgrim, the objective was to reach the cathedral where the relics of the saint, are contained and they could be revered and all of that sort of thing. That isn't hardly what impels anybody for pilgrimage today. I mean, if I, for example, want to, be near the relics of St. James in Santiago de Compostela, Spain, I can be there in 24 hours from now. Right. I don't have to walk 500 miles to get there. So in modern pilgrimage, though it's a cliche, it's really true. The journey becomes the point.
Yes.
The point is not to just get to the cathedral. The point is the journey. And and of course this podcast is named, Restoring the Soul. I mean, that's the perfect language. When I'm on pilgrimage, I am very aware of my soul being restored.
I love all that. You alluded to this, but the simplicity of it, to me, when people say, why do I do this and why would I go back a third time? I recently had somebody go like, ooh, why would you go back again, even a second time? It's one place in my life where my life is about one thing.
Yeah.
And, Psalm 27:4, that one thing I ask of the Lord, this is what I seek. And suddenly that all kind of comes before me. And it's not like there's not mental distractions and that I have to slow down and be intentional, but it's like there's so few spaces where we can just do and be in that one thing kind of space.
All right. I have a question for you. It has nothing to do with anything spiritual. On your first time, did you ever lose the trail at any point?
Yes.
I did too.
It's not marked well.
It's not marked well. And doing it the second time, you can avoid that because you kind of remember, okay, yeah, here's where I went wrong. I'm not going to do that. But yeah, it's not marked that well. You just made me feel better about myself.
Yeah, and that was actually part of the
I've talked to several people that have made mistakes on that.
Yeah, you look for that little cross on the circle, and that gets you there. Well, That's so cool. Let me come back to this idea of heaven, and will you define heaven? I remember years ago reading Dallas Willard's Divine Conspiracy, and he talks about the Lord's Prayer, and where we all say, "Our Father who art in heaven." He translated that as, "Dear Father, always near us," and then gave like half a chapter on the fact that heaven is as much here in some sense as it is up there and out there, and therefore the subtitle of your book of Heaven, Earth, and Mystery.
Yes.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
What if healing didn't have to take years? Hey friends, it's Michael. At Restoring the Soul, we guide men, women, and couples through intensive counseling that brings deep transformation. often in just a few weeks. And our mission is fueled by generous people like you. Now you can become a monthly partner by setting up a recurring donation of any amount. If you give $20 or more on a monthly basis, I'll send you a signed copy of my book, Sacred Attachment. To set up a monthly gift, visit restoringthesoul.com and click donate. Make sure in the notes section to type the word book. Thanks for helping to restore lives.
Well, exactly. First of all, in the Lord's Prayer, if you're going to translate it literally, it wouldn't be our Father who art in heaven. It'd be our Father who is in the heavens, which has a different feel to the heavens. There's the heavens and then there's the earth. And we don't just mean the sky or the stellar heavens. What is intended there is this other realm, this other world of unseen existences. Paul uses the language, while we look not at things that are seen, that is material, but things that are unseen. For that which is seen is temporal, that which is unseen is eternal. The Hebrews, the ancient Hebrews, through their scriptures, through Revelation, we would say, I think, knew of this other world that is the realm of God and angels and other attendant beings. The Greek philosophers, especially Plato, through what they called reason, they decided that such a world must exist. And they have some very complex but very sound philosophical reasons for how they get there. But they say this temporal world must be somehow sustained by an eternal, non-temporal realm. Plato used the language of, the forms, that it would be in the realm of the perfect forms, but that correlates with what we think of as heaven. So I say it this way: heaven is not, out there somewhere. You go out to Neptune, take a right, you can't miss it. It's not that. It's right here. Mm. It's right here. So, in the scriptures we read, and maybe in a kind of surprisingly frequent occurrence of angels appearing. Well, it isn't like angels are traveling vast distances, and they're here, but almost never are we aware of them. But they're here, and so another way of thinking of it is, astrophysicists can tell us that the universe that we know began 13.8 billion years ago. And that there was a moment when all of the matter of the universe was compressed to a singularity. This would have been a very, very heavy particle.
Yes, very.
All of the matter in the universe compressed to a singularity, and then it began to expand rapidly. We call this the Big Bang. So that even though, like, I'm sitting at this table, and it feels to me very solid, and yet, most of it is still space. I mean, if you get down to the subatomic level, there's the space between the particles takes up more than all of the matter. And I sometimes think of the space between particles of matter as the heavens. I mean,
I love that.
I didn't write that because I'm not confident enough quite to say that, but what I am trying to help people think of is not heaven out there somewhere, removed, remote, distant, but right here in a realm that we don't see through empirical means, the senses, but that we can be aware of spiritually and can interact with in all kinds of ways.
So it's profound, and I want to go think about all of that, but I think it's a brilliant and beautiful metaphor that heaven is the space of everything that we don't see and that we can't enter into with physical eyes, but only with spiritual eyes, as Paul talks about, the eyes of the heart that we see. I also want to come back to, as you talked about the, everything compressed into one singularity. It makes me think about how the word glory, I remember from studying years and years ago, that Hebrew word havod, it has more to do with weight than a bright light, right? So the glory is all contained there, and then in whatever proliferation or explosion or Big Bang is there, it's like the glory is released into the universe, but somehow it preexisted that moment. We're speculating, of course.
Yes,
but
another way of thinking about this kavod, weighty, substantive. We are conditioned to think that if the heavens exist, they are certain. They're ephemeral. They're wispy. They are ghost-like, and that this is what's solid and real. Where in fact, the thought of Scripture is the reverse, because this is temporal. This will eventually fade away. It's the heavenly realm that is eternal. That is more enduring and substantive. C.S. Lewis touches on this a lot.
Yeah,
and it shows, he has his famous sermon, The Weight of Glory, but he also has, in The Great Divorce, if you know this one, the people they take a bus trip from hell to heaven. But when they get there, they find out that they're like ghosts, that heaven is real and substantial, and they can't really walk on the grass because it hurts their feet.
Yep.
And everything there is far more solid than they are. Yeah.
That in and of itself, I don't know if it was in your text that you wrote or if it was in one of the IVP publishers' write-ups, but they used the word a couple times about compelling and how you're trying to create a compelling vision. And that is a compelling vision when you talk about heaven being more full of substance than what we know here. That's like, of course we'd all want more substance. That's what our soul is looking for. That's the idea of the pilgrimage.
Yes, exactly. So, somewhere early in the book, I say something like, heaven has gone missing. Because there were so many bad ideas about heaven, sensational, escapist, sentimental, that people became maybe embarrassed. And said, well, we're not going to do that. We believe in a good, earthy faith that speaks of justice and speaks of restoration here. And we want a faith that is not just in the sweet by and by, pie in the sky when I die sort of thing. And I agree with all of that, but that can be overdone.
Yes. Because
if we remove heaven from our theological cosmology, we almost render Christian theology incoherent. It's such a dominant theme. It's so presumed. So much is built upon that I wanted to maybe model a way of talking soberly and seriously about heaven, because also it is, by the way, our blessed hope. Yes. It is what sustains our hope, and it has for 2,000 years for Christians. So I wanted to recover that. I think the damage that was done by Left Behind, Late Great Planet Earth, all of this wacky eschatology, is that people then didn't want to talk about anything like heaven, and so I'm trying to recover that.
Yeah,
or at least I'm not trying. I'm trying to do my part. I'm trying to make my little contribution. Okay, so
yeah, no, I hear you, and every contribution matters. But you use the word overcorrection in the book too. I think that there was an overcorrection, and I love how you talked about I think it was about a third of the way into the book, you actually talked a little bit about hermeneutics, about how. I'm trying to recall the passage. How basically empiricism, the hermeneutics and understanding Scripture really became about empirical, textual criticism, and that the mystery just so slowly slipped out. And when we get to that place where we're about restoration, which I'm all about, the restoration of the earth, and Revelation 21 of God bringing heaven to earth. Everything changing from those unhealthy senses, we can be left, and I said this as we prayed before this podcast started, we're left without a person and we're left without a place. We just have nicer Christian ethics, and it's like we've removed the guts from it. So as I read the book, it felt like heaven is part of the guts that we need to have of the faith.
At one point in the book, I think early on, it's one of my favorite sentences in the book that some people picked up and others maybe haven't. But I say, Christianity without transcendence degenerates into politics.
Yes.
And I'll be forthcoming here. I'm really critiquing a little bit of the Christian left, Christian progressive, who I'm very sympathetic with. And sometimes they claim me as one of their own, but I'm not sure if I am or not. But so all of the well-intended desire to set things right, be about justice, love your neighbor in some sort of tangible way. I'm all for that. I think in my own way I engage in that and I do that. But if you lose any kind of serious talk about heaven, all you're going to end up with is politics. That's it. And I don't want to do that. If we're praying, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, well, it presumes that we actually believe there is a heaven where things are right. And that is somehow that is what we are trying to move toward. We're trying to see a union of earth with heaven, but that there already is a realm where things are restored, where things are right, where things are healed. And so we want to move into fuller participation with that world here and now. But we have to believe that world exists.
Yes, yeah, and to believe it and to understand it as correctly as possible. So along the lines of what you talked about the subtle critique of the left, you wrote, to have a compelling message in the 21st century, the church must speak confidently, if humbly, about the reality of the spiritual world. And that's what you're talking about, is the transcendence. I think everybody listening knows the word transcendence, but it feels like the world is desperate for transcendence and searching for it, and yet missing it everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, this is the aftermath of modernity, which really begins with the Enlightenment, with a deep fascination with science, which, by the way, I just want to everybody hear me. I don't know of any major peer-reviewed scientific theory that is any threat to my faith at all. I'm all for it. I mean, I'm going to watch all of the science documentaries. I like reading books on astrophysics. I love all of that stuff. But my one realm of pushback is when science has said everything it can about the phenomenon of being, there is still more to be said. And we became so fascinated with our ability, beginning in the 17th century, to explore the world around us empirically. That is, through the amplification of human senses. What we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, all of that. That we put on blinders, and we became almost oblivious to this other world. And we begin to think that there maybe no other world exists. So, and that is completely detrimental to Christian faith.
And there again,
so if empiricism says repeatedly that there can be no other world than the material world, that the material world is the only world there is, I think most people are intimidated to try to push back on that, but in their soul, they feel the emptiness of it. I mean, if all there is matter, then not much really matters. It's hard to come up with any meaning if all there is atoms, having random associations. So people, you're exactly right. People sense that there is some other world and there is some other realm. And so if they can't, I mean, they'll at least lean into it in fiction and fantasy.
Yeah.
But if they begin to turn to religion, they want to turn to people who actually believe in another world, not just people that have a political message with a few Bible verses thrown in. Yeah. They want to believe that there is a God, that there is another realm, that death is not the end. They want to believe all of that. And so I think some of the church is missing a golden opportunity where souls so weary of the thinness of modernity are aching for something more, and they show up in our churches and we give them practical sermons. They don't want a practical sermon. I mean, if all you're looking for is practical tips on how to live a better life. They're everywhere. That's not hard to find. The church has a unique message about the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ and its profound implications. And more people are hungry for that than I think we know.
I think so too. So I've followed and listened to your preaching for a while. I've read your books. I know Brad Jersick and other people who you're very close with, best friends with. And as I've watched you from a distance, I've really, really resonated with your theology, the way that you commingle so many different denominations and approaches. And I'd love for you to comment on that, about how you've kind of come to that place, because you wrote a book about that as well. But describe, through your pastoral work over decades now, and I think you've been in the ministry for 40 plus years, right?
44 years, yeah.
At one church, by the way, ladies and
One
gentlemen.
church. Yeah.
Which is, that's like David Letterman in the Ed Sullivan Theater for 35 years.
It's longer than that.
Yeah, it is. So if Jesus' birth, death, and resurrection, Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. That's the mystery of faith that I proclaim every Sunday at my church.
Yeah.
And if heaven is more than just where I go when we die, try to put words for maybe the listener who is either deconstructed and saying, well, I listened to Cusick because I kind of like some of his thinking, or if they're not even a believer and never have been, what is this blessed hope that is on the other side of the belief of Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again? Because what I think as a therapist, people's hearts are hungry for experience, not just a thought to latch onto that I believe this, but believing in terms of actually having a living encounter with this reality.
Maybe a place to begin would be with love. So I would ask someone, if they're married or, whatever, do you love your spouse? Do you love your children? Yes. I said, well, do you think that can all be explained by material means, by the process of evolution, by hormones? All that's involved. The hormones are involved, and there is, the survival of the species is benefited when we care for our young, all that sort of stuff. I'm not denying any of that. But do you think that's all we mean when we talk about love? That it's just evolutionary advantageous? Is it just genetic? Is it just hormones? Or is there something deeper? I think almost all people, not all people, but almost all, unless people are like definitely committed to philosophical materialism, will say, no, I believe that altruistic love actually exists. All right? I'm talking about the world where that comes from, the world where that is sustained. God is that. God is love. And love may be the strongest hint that you can encounter on a regular basis that there is another world. Another hint would be wonder, and I talk about that maybe a little bit more in the book. There are these moments when, often in nature, but there's other moments too, but often in nature where we have this experience of awe, of kind of this of being overwhelmed, but also filled with joy. Why? Why do we have this experience of bliss? Where is that coming from? I think you are brushing up against, you're catching a glimpse of heaven through maybe something in nature that is beautiful. You live out there by the mountains, so I'm a little bit jealous.
Yeah.
When I'm in the mountains, I experience that on a regular basis. And I tell a story in this book about having kind of a mystical experience in Rocky Mountain National Park.
Yeah.
Where I was just over, the moment was so beautiful. It literally took my breath away. That's not a cliche. I gasped and I prayed. I said, God, I want to spend my life filled with this kind of wonder. I don't want to lose this. It was more of a prayer of gratitude than anything, I guess. I wasn't expecting an answer. I wasn't expecting a reply, I just said, God, I want to live my life filled with wonder. But immediately there was this impression, not an audible voice. It didn't come from the realm of the material. So my eardrums were not vibrating.
Mm.
But in that other part of me, that spiritual part of me, instantly there was this is the greatest wonder of all. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us.
Mm.
I wasn't expecting that, wasn't looking for it. It was a response. But that became life altering. And so I started just leaning into that. And I would just meditate on it. I would think about it. Not to write sermons, not to do anything, but just, the logos of God, the wisdom, the knowledge, the love, the telos, all that God is, joined us, became one of us, fully human. Whoa. To this day, it's like, what a mysterious wonder that endlessly fascinates me. I've kind of veered away maybe a little bit from your original question,
No.
but
You're
love
going
and wonder and these sorts of things. And Michael, I have learned that if you're having a conversation with someone and they trust you as a therapist, you'll understand about this. They don't think you're trying to, manipulate them. You're not trying to use them. You're not trying to get something from them. You're not cajoling them to join something. You're just an honest soul having a conversation. If they can sense that from you, and you ask most people, have you ever had a spiritual experience? Most people will say yes, and they can tell it to you. And they like to tell it if they know it's okay. So much of our world is so secular that people are hesitant. They're afraid that they're going to be maybe dismissed or laughed at. So I mean, people are walking around all around us who have had spiritual experiences, and they would like to be able to maybe talk about it. They would like someone to listen to them, but they're not sure where they can find those people. Yeah. And their initial inclination will not be church, unfortunately, because there they feel like, okay, they're going to try to get me to join something, do something, believe something.
Right.
So what I'm saying is the problem of a disenchanted world is maybe less of a problem than we think. It's a construct that's all around us that suppresses things, but we human beings are still spiritual beings, and they have these yearnings, these longings, and these experiences. And if we can figure out how to maybe have conversations around that, I think it could be very fruitful.
Yeah. Gosh, my mind's going in so many different directions, Brian. First of all, the artists, the writers, the painters, the Spielbergs, the secular movie people, they're the ones that are oftentimes giving us language to put
and they're not afraid of spiritual themes, are they?
That's right. No, yeah. I mean, Spielberg's in the news a lot lately. Look at what he did with E.T. and what Lucas did with Star Wars, and that was all deeply spiritual. I love the story in the book and what you just came back to about Rocky Mountain National Park, because what I'm hearing is that ineffable moment was contained in the reality of the Logos and in all of who God is and what he was at the beginning and is now forever. And I think that there are people that have absolutely zero belief in God, maybe no interest in God, that are, as you said, constantly having those moments and wanting somebody to just ask them a question and that kind of thing.
Well, and the word God, I mean, God, G-O-D, out of the German, God, it's a container that can be filled with so many wrong ideas.
Right.
That oftentimes when someone identifies to me they're an atheist, I'll say, well, tell me more about this God in whom you do not believe, which is an odd question, but you know what? They can tell you.
Yeah.
Tell me more about the God in whom you do not believe. And they tell me, and I almost always can say, I don't believe any of that either. I don't believe in that God, but I still believe in God.
What do you want to talk about right now? Let's say we've got 5 minutes left. What is it that you'd want people to know about this book or about the topics that we're talking about that feel important and close to your pastoral heart?
What I would say is that something probably has been missing for a lot of people that pertains to the idea of heaven. I have a very interesting chapter, if I say so myself. The last chapter, chapter 10, in the
Buen
company
Camino.
of angels,
Oh,
which,
yep.
well, Buen Camino is like I didn't give it a chapter number, but you're right, it is a chapter. I just called it conclusion, but yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, the actual last chapter is called In the Company of Angels, and I talk about angels, and I give this very, I don't know what the word, very provocative idea. I'm not endorsing it. I'm not saying I don't. I don't know. But I don't want to give it to people right now, but a 20th century Russian Orthodox theologian, philosopher, Sergius Bogolkov, talks about guardian angels as our platonic self, the heavenly friend that we are trying to ultimately become. And I put that in the book not to endorse it. I'm not saying I believe that. In fact, I tell people, but I'm not saying I don't. I don't know. But I think it's a way to open people up to thinking a little more creatively about the reality of this other world and what the implications of that might be. I do think the book will not bore people.
Right. No.
I mean, look at me being all so confident and everything, but I feel good about it. I think it will not. I think people will find it interesting, hopefully helpful, but I think they'll certainly find it interesting.
Yeah, and you're just like you're an extraordinary preacher and communicator. You're an exceptional writer, and it's filled with anybody who knows you. I think there was a comfortably numb quote from Pink Floyd.
Yeah,
I was surprised there weren't more Bob Dylan quotes with your.
I'm trying to tamp that down. Although there are lines in there that I just steal, and if I don't do the whole verse with a rhyme, you won't catch it.
Yeah,
it's sort of a game I play, and the hardcore Dylan people out there will. Oh, I see what he did there.
That's great. So here's where I'd like to end. I want to do a shout out for your prayer school, and it's really not a school. It's a 3-hour program.
4.5 hour, yeah,
3.5 hours. I did a version of it that I downloaded through your church. We're going to put all that information on the website. I grew up Catholic and have had a return to the liturgical tradition probably for the last 15 years. And the prayer school that I did with you, I have now written several iterations of what you started, and I finally have something that is comfortable with me that takes about 20 minutes. And there are days when I don't have words or I don't want to pray, and I just sit down and I read through the liturgy. And as I want you to comment in a moment, there's scripture, but there's also historic prayers, like the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, and it has really been wonderful. And so the question is, how does one go from either having an unhealthy view of heaven or overcorrecting where they've lost the transcendence? Pastorally, what do you say to people to say, here's how you begin to live that out, and somehow tie in the prayer school? How's that for an assignment?
Well, of course, prayer is trafficking in this other world. And that's what we wouldn't bother to pray if we didn't believe that somehow, instantly, my words are being heard by the being that sustains all that is and inhabits the realm called heaven. So we are when we pray, we're suddenly trafficking in this other world. And prayer school, I've done 105 prayer schools. I just did the 105th in Edmonton, Canada, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Wow!
But here, I'll give you some news. Hardly anybody knows about this. This is my prayer school. This is my little notebook. I just started that on Friday.
I love it.
I have a contract with Simon & Schuster. They came to me, and they are interested. They want me to turn prayer school into a book.
Oh,
so I can do 105 prayer schools. I don't know if I can do 105 more. And plus, there's travel and it's all. So eventually, you create a book, and the books can go wherever they go. And so prayer school is in the process of becoming a book pretty quick. I mean, my deadline with Simon & Schuster is December 15th, but I've set a deadline of September 10th. So that's an aggressive deadline, but
Yeah,
hopefully
yeah.
we'll meet it. But so fairly soon, prayer book will be in a book form now. So that's news. I haven't said that on any podcast or anything yet.
I love that. When I first heard of it, I thought, let me just forgive me in advance. I thought that's the dumbest thing I ever heard because it's just reading words and it's not really prayer, which was my reaction to the Catholicism of my childhood and an overcorrection. And the reading words actually allows me to have more connection with God and then to feel a spaciousness outside of that time of reading the words that I would say for the first time in my life since doing your prayer school, I actually think I have a prayer life.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah, I've been a Christian 40-some years, and I'm finally like, I have a prayer life.
I hear this all the time, by the way. So, this is how I know that there is an appetite for this.
So what's the information for the prayer school specifically if people want to learn more about that or take it?
Well, the next prayer school I will be doing will be in St. Joseph. It's not even posted yet, but I'll say it now. This will happen, and this will prompt me to tell them to get it up so people can sign up for it. We'll be in St. Joseph, Missouri at Word of Life Church, October 30 and 31.
Okay.
But the big news is that it's going to be in book form. Yeah, it's going to be out. It's going to be at least a year. I don't know, maybe the end of next year it'll be out. Maybe. Hopefully.
Oh, congratulations on that. That's wonderful. Brian Zahnd, thank you for the conversation. Thank you for the book. I'm going to hold it up. Unseen Existences.
And show the back because thank you for right there.
Ta-da!
Right there. Michael John Kuzik right there.
Yeah.
Very, very lovely endorsement.
You named heaven as our true home. That was the big thing that struck me. Well, thank you for writing it. Thank you for all that you're doing. It's always great to talk with you.
Thank you.
So we've wrapped up another episode of Restoring the Soul. We want you to know that Restoring the Soul is so much more than a podcast. In fact, the heart of what we have done for nearly 20 years is intensive counseling. When you can't wait months or years to get out of the rut you're in, our intensive counseling programs in Colorado allow you to experience deep change in half-day blocks over 2 weeks. To learn more, visit restoringthesoul.com. That's restoringthesoul.com.